On today's episode of Locked On Wild, turns out that makeshift top six against Dallas, probably not going to cut it.
Hey, this is Matt Brodin, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day. We thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, just match with Indeed. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we recap a 2-1 loss against the Dallas Stars. We'll talk about the loss of Mats Zuccarello and the hopeful return of Eriksson and Jonas Brodin. But a lot to discuss. We'll also take a look at what the top six should do to try to maximize their offense here over the next few weeks. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild since 2021. And as you can see, little makeshift setup here for today. Just working a few things out, but we'll get that ironed out here this week. And joined by Alex Micheletti here for today's episode. Unfortunately, no victory Micheletti Monday, but it was a tough battle against Dallas. The Wild, they did not look particularly good early, but I guess that can be attributed to the fact that they're just trying to find some lines that worked, Alex, against Dallas.
Yeah, the Matt Boldy at center experiment, it didn't last very long. They had to try to figure that out fast, and the good thing is, they tried to hang in there with Dallas. I mean, with all the injuries that they had, it could have been a lot worse, right?
Yeah. And it is, I think, a very similar theme to what we saw against Winnipeg, a game in which the Wild were also shorthanded, a game in which the Wild battled very competitively. And so you've got two big Central Division tests in the books and two one-goal losses for the Minnesota Wild in the first couple showings. And, it's a situation where you'd like to at least get a point, but got to give some credit to Jake Oettinger at the end of that game for just shutting things down and not allowing the Wild to get anything, especially in that third period.
Yeah, Oettinger just seems to have the Wild's number. It's incredible. He's top 5 goalie, future Vezina. If Hellebuck wasn't around right now, he'd be getting it. Yeah, it stinks having both of those two in the same division. That's for sure.
Yeah, I get very tired of it because let's get some goalies in here that it's easier to score against, because I want to see some goals. And right. Lately we have not. So it's frustrating because those injuries to Mats Zuccarello and to Jonas Brodin and to Eriksson happened right before arguably your biggest game of the season. But let's just go down the list of concern level for all of the injuries, because it sounds like Eriksson and Jonas Brodin are going to practice today, which gives you hope that they should be back for tomorrow's game against St. Louis. But 3 to 4 weeks for Mats Zuccarello, which leaves you now with probably 4 top 6 guys out of 6, because we need to. And it's not us per se, but I think there needs to be a long conversation about what exactly Marcus Johansson is doing for the top 6, because that seemed to me to be a little questionable to throw him on the top line, because in a pinch like in just trying to get through the game against the Montreal Canadiens, you had success with that line. It scored one goal, but throwing that in against a Dallas Stars team that actually has legitimate center depth, that's a completely different thing, and it just didn't work.
No, not at all. Yeah, I don't know why they, not having Rossi there after the way he had been playing, it didn't make much sense.
And then, like, I'm just looking at some of the numbers here because obviously, I was in the throes of moving over the weekend, so didn't have a chance to see the game live very much. But the Wild did go to Kaprizov, Rossi, and Boldy, and it led to a goal. Like, so just go with that going forward.
It took that long into the game to make that move, and I think we're underestimating the Zuccarello injury. I just Kaprizov, that's his go-to guy, and if it's as bad as what has been thrown around, I don't see it being 3 weeks.
No.
I mean, that it looks. I couldn't imagine the pain that he's going through right now, and to just try to even think about skating again. It's. I don't think we'll be seeing him anytime soon. Hopefully, who knows? Maybe before the start of the new year, but it'll be tough.
Yeah, and I don't want to speculate, but the fact that he already had surgery,
right,
not great.
It's
not great.
No, and he's just so important for chemistry with Kaprizov and power play. So they're gonna have to dig deep here for sure.
I think Bill Guerin. I'm just gonna say it because as good of a start as this team has gotten off to, I think Bill Guerin's got to make a move here within the next by Thanksgiving. I think you got to go out and get somebody that you can put into a higher role now, but that can be a top 6 guy for the rest of the season. Because again, I will say, Marcus Johansson ain't it. You can't just skip through the rest of the season and just say, well, he's trying out there. Like, you have to get production. You have to get production, especially now that a lot of your resources have been allocated to one line. You have to have 2. You have to have 2 that can score. And the Wild don't right now.
Right. And when they start playing these, tougher teams, they get exposed a little bit here. And Colorado is now starting to get fully healthy. And so they'll be making a move, up the standings. Nashville's better than what they are right now. I think they're gonna start climbing. So the pressure's on for sure to maintain that second spot that they're in.
And just looking at, because we've got one team that is essentially out of it at this point because of the fact that they've already moved somebody off the roster. Pittsburgh. Right. I don't care who it is per se. Go get somebody off that Penguins team because they're looking to sell, and you can get somebody for a pick or a prospect, but it has to happen. Like, I was really trying to not be super reactionary just because of the Dallas game. I'm more so because I agree with you. I think 3 to 4 weeks for Mats Zuccarello would be an amazingly optimistic timetable. And you can't afford to just wait for somebody to come back. If you are a team and this is the year to do it. This is the year to make moves to try to keep yourself in the playoff push. Go get somebody. Go get somebody that you can throw into that top 6 that can help you score.
They have the prospects to deal too. They didn't give up anybody last year, so this is, like you said, this is the time to do it, and they have all the ammo and the draft picks to do it.
And for the crowd, for the Liam Ogren crowd, for the Damon Hunt crowd, yes, that would be a route that you could go, and I probably would be fine with that in a pinch, like short term. But at the end of the day, I think the fact that they continue to just be brought up to sit, I think that tells you exactly what you need to know about what John Hines and Bill Guerin think about Liam Ogren and Damon Hunt. And Mikey Milne got in for a game, but I think it's pretty evident that they don't view these guys as ready to take the reins full time, or they'd be here. They'd be here full time if they did.
Yeah, they're just in a pinch type of players, like you said.
And I think the fact that Devin Shore and Ben Jones got called up for the road trip, I think that's another indication of exactly that. Is they're looking for guys to fill roster spots in the back end, not necessarily fill spots in the roster.
Right, 100%. Devin's been in the league for a long time, and so he's a guy that they want a veteran in there. So it makes sense to why he got called up if he has to play.
So we'll see what happens, but I do want to talk a little bit about Eriksson and Brodin because, like we said, supposed to practice today. So hopefully that's good news for their ability to be available for what is going to be another pivotal week for this Minnesota Wild team. Because guess what? A week from today, you host the Winnipeg Jets. A week from today. So it's the schedule's not getting any easier. And it would be really nice to not have injuries just derail another season. But Mats Zuccarello is he's not a replaceable player unless you go get somebody that's a top 6 caliber guy.
Yeah, 100%. What's getting really frustrating is these yearly Brodin injuries now too, which we don't know how they happen, and it's just it seems like they start to linger, and it's just backbreaking not having him back there because it changes everything for the D core.
And I will say too, you don't see a ton of players get to 82 games. Like it doesn't happen as frequently as it did. So I'm willing to give players like less than 10 games. Like if you play 75 or more, that's acceptable for me. Like that's giving a guy a night off to kind of getting banged up. But it's when you dip into the 60s or dip into the high 50s.
When you're making a ton of money too.
Yep. That's where the problems arise. So we'll talk a little bit more about those two as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy. So your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. I'll keep you posted, everybody, as to whether or not we'll be able to postcast after tomorrow night's game. Still getting unpacked. And as you can see by my current setup that I'm holding my microphone, still working on getting the internet situated to be able to do that. So I'll keep you posted, but should be able to get you episodes at the very least here over the next few days. So stay tuned. appreciate everybody's patience. Postcasts aren't going anywhere. It just turns out I was. So we'll get back to that as soon as we can. Alex, before we get into a little bit more discussion on Jonas Brodin, Joel Eriksson, let's shout out a couple of things that continue to be impressive. And number one, Filip Gustavsson, who just continues to churn out elite level performances. I'm not talking about just good goaltending. I'm talking about like upper echelon. He leads the NHL in save percentage and goals against average. That's not a fluke, because now he's got, I believe he has now 10 games under his belt. I think it was. That's enough of a sample size for a goalie to where this just isn't a flash in a pan. Like Filip Gustavsson put in the work that he needed and clearly has turned the corner this season after a pretty inconsistent year last year.
And he's beaten some good teams. I got into it with a Dallas Stars fan on X on Saturday night, saying that the Wild haven't played any good teams. I was like, they've beaten Tampa, they've beaten Toronto, they've beaten Florida. I mean, those are some really, really, really good teams. So I don't know what you're talking about there. Going back and forth with Dallas Stars fans is interesting on social media.
Yeah, and I got called a complete homer too. So, take your team and leave us alone. You've got the North Stars. Just take your stars and just leave us alone. So it's 13 games for Filip Gustavsson this year, and it's to the tune of an 8.32 record, a 2.08 goals against average, and a 9.27 save percentage. And he just continues to keep this team in games. Like, that was the sole reason the Wild were in position to even be close to Dallas, was the fact that he was able to keep them off the board as much as he was. And not only that, 16 straight kills for the penalty kill. Seems like they might
keeping those, keeping them in it for sure when they're shorthanded. Pun intended, shorthanded with guys. So it's very impressive.
And I think the number now is 77.5%, which is a number that the Wild did not hit at any point last season. Like, I don't think they even broke 70 with the kill. So it's clear that the road trip really something clicked. Something clicked with the penalty kill on the road trip to where the results have started to be way more consistent. And you're going to need that to continue. Like, I worry way more about the penalty kill than I do the power play, because power plays tend to be a little streaky. If you're leaky on the penalty kill, you are in trouble.
100%. And like you said, I mean, they have Matt Boldy, Kaprizov on the power play there, Faber helping quarterback it. So there's some talent on there for at least on the top power play. And it's a penalty kill that they got to focus on, and they're clearly doing that right now.
So let's finish. Let's just talk a little bit before we take a look at what's coming up on the road. So as John Hines mentioned, Joel Eriksson expected to practice today. John Hines said that he felt way better after whatever the injury was. I think it was a lower body injury. We never got any definitive word. Shocker. Because that's just how all injuries are dealt with. And I don't know what happened to Jonas Brodin. It happened at the end of the Chicago game, but it sounds like he's supposed to practice too. So I guess that's good news for both of those guys. And as far as I can tell, nobody else hurt other than those three. But
Rossi kind of did something, but he returned to the game.
Okay.
But it looked like he remember when his stick almost broke and he flubbed the shot. And it looked like his ankle, but he he made it out okay. So so hopefully he doesn't tweak anything against the Blues. But
Yeah.
we'll see. Yeah.
Fingers crossed, because they're going to need him, because it
Yes.
turns out if you are missing two of your top 6 players, that's not a great recipe for success, especially if you only have 5 top 6 guys to begin with.
Right.
Bad news bears.
Yeah, it's there's another guy that I wanted to talk about too that is just really frustrating me is Yakov Trenin. It seems like he's been a ghost out there, and for what they're paying him, and he's not even adding to what he brings to the game. So I don't know what's going on with him.
I still contend that I think he was brought in as Marcus Foligno insurance, and Marcus Foligno has been healthy all year. He's been contributing all year. And so I think that is what they call in the business world a redundancy, which is just other than David Perron, don't get me started on that. I would have liked to have seen a top 6 scorer added to the mix with that roster spot, but I'm going to be adamant about that. I think Trenin was brought in to help protect against Marcus Foligno getting banged up again, but Foligno's been fine.
Yeah, he's been hitting. Especially like you said on this road trip, I think he found something to his game. So hopefully that continues, because he's the heart of the team for sure. Yeah,
I'm gonna keep saying it too. This is like in TV ads, those subliminal messages. Get top 6 help, please. Like somebody
that will shoot the puck. The opposite of Marcus.
Well, they're gonna need it, because Mats Zuccarello not only was a playmaker, but he was one of their top goal scorers this year.
Yeah, he's been shooting the puck, which has been great to see, and it's just that's such a devastating injury. I mean, it almost feels worse than a knee. It's just I can't imagine the pain that he's going through.
Well, I'm sure it didn't feel great. I was joining Isha on his game stream in between periods, and he was like, "Oh, it looked like that got Zuccarello in the knee," and I was like, "No, no, it did not.
No.
Nope. That got him in a bad place, but." Yeah. Hopefully he's fine. I am anxious to get an update from John Hines here, because, like you said, that's concerning at how quickly he went into surgery after that happened.
It's never good, and then that makes it seem like it's a long recovery for sure.
Yeah. So we'll see there. We'll continue to try to push for a top 6 help. Because they're going to need it. So let's take a look at what is coming up for the rest of the week, because as I mentioned, there's a pretty big game coming up on a week from today. So we will discuss a couple of key Central Division games on the horizon as we finish today's episode of Locked on Wilds after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by Indeed. We are driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Plus, listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure to check out the Locked On NHL podcast as well, so you don't miss out on any key news and key injury updates all throughout the week. All right, Alex. So we've got a big Central Division collision coming up here tomorrow, and then a couple of games on the West Coast. You've got Edmonton and you've got Calgary. And so more key tests. St. Louis is just about as bipolar as you can get for a team. Like, they have been humiliated in several games this year, but they still find a way to be around 500. So that's not going to be an easy test to start this off.
No, Blues games are always weird, as we know. It's just they love playing against the Wild, and I mean the last one that they had was interesting because they had a goal called back by some by the refs that they were not happy about, and there's just some bad history between some players. So yeah, it'll be interesting. They don't have Robert Thomas, which is a gigantic injury for them. So they're banged up. So yeah, we'll see what type of Jordan Bennington we get to. It's it's a roller coaster for him, and there's been rumors that he could be made available. If they continue to stick out of this playoff spots in the West.
Could you imagine him in a Colorado Avalanche uniform?
Oh my goodness! Wow, yeah, they're gonna. We talk about it all the time. They're hunting for a goalie for sure. I think Gorgiev just went on the IR, so they have a bunch of no names in that now. So it's a nightmare. They got rid of Capo, and then he got claimed by Winnipeg again. So I don't know what they're going to do in that. It's a mess for them for sure.
If you're on a safari, Bennington is that lion that you stumble upon, but it's got its back turned, and when it turns its head, it's got like the dislocated jaw, and you're like, oh no, don't want that.
Another guy that just got put on waivers, but if Colorado does this, it'll be hilarious. Jack Campbell's available now, so. If they do that, oh my goodness.
Yeah, that might be
desperate, but yeah,
that might be game over for them. Well, you could they could maybe trade for Stuart Skinner, who the Wild will likely see in Edmonton as they take on the Oilers on Thursday, and it's an Oilers team again, just exactly what you'd expect. You get Leon Draisaitl playing really well, Connor McDavid getting back into the swing of things after injury, but they win 2, they lose 3. They win 3, they lose 2. Like they are even 500 right now. Yeah. They can't find any footing to gain hold of, and 5th in the Pacific right now, and they just continue to kind of fall behind.
Yeah, with all the talent that they have, they should not be where they are right now. But it's questionable goaltending. The Skinner-Pickard combo, I don't think is scaring a whole lot of people.
No, Skinner, in fact, right now has an .877 save percentage, and collectively as a team, because even though Pickard has a 2.49 goals against average, he's got an .890 save percentage.
Yeah, he's the classic journeyman. It's amazing. I can't believe they decided to go with him for number 2. But it's I'm not scared by their goaltending. That's for sure.
But again, this is why you need to make sure that your top 6 is shored up, because how are you supposed to test these goalies if you only have one line capable of doing it?
And then it makes it easier to defend, because this is the only line that has a threat to score. The others, it's a whole lot of passing.
Whole lot of hoping somebody else will make a play.
right? Or a defenseman.
Yeah, that's the nicest way I can put it, is just hoping somebody else will make a play. The week finishes up with a matchup against the Calgary Flames, who are 9-6-3. So, as is frequently mentioned on the broadcast and is wrong, they're not 3 games above 500 because overtime losses still count as losses. So you're 9-9. It's just 3 losses in which you got a point. But it's still a Calgary Flames team that I think is impressing some people, and they're off to a much better start than anybody expected. Nobody really standing out because it turns out Jonathan Huberdeau, that early start that he had, he just has gone ice cold.
It's like Marcus Johansson.
Oh.
times 8 with the contract.
I think I would rather have Huberdeau at this point. But that's really
they're very similar with what's going on with them.
It's like choosing which finger to cut off, your index or your middle finger. It's like I don't want to do either.
They have one of the most underrated defensemen that I enjoy watching play, just because he's a pain in the butt to play against, and is now starting to come out. His offensive game is starting to show a lot more now, as Mackenzie Weegar. He's gets underneath the guy's skin, and he can really shoot the puck too. And they've moved him to their top power play, and so that's a name to keep an eye out on. And of course, Nazem Kadri, who's always been a Wild, just get under the skin of the Wild and the rest of the league for sure.
And keep an eye out as well. This was one of the players acquired in the Jacob Markstrom trade, Kevin Ball, because he's big, he's huge, and he's going to be looking to levy the body just like Matt Dumba did against the Wilds.
That was wild. That was no pun intended, but that was crazy. I can't believe he got Bogosian. I mean, I thought Bogosian was going to win that fight, but. Dumba got him, so that was interesting. And
did he switch? Did he switch hands or?
Yeah, I don't know. It was really, and then the worst. Then Bogosian fell, and that kind of just ended it. But
typical, pretty much par for the course. Like I was flipping through highlights.
And they had Dumba on their social media and the winning graphic, with the cowboy hat on. So of course,
naturally,
rub it in.
Of course, but I think in this week, I feel like you got to go 2-1.
Yes,
I think you got to go 2-1 here.
Edmonton will be tough. I mean, they should be able to score, but they got to just try to be able to keep pace with that. With that Edmonton power play especially, and stay out of the box. And in St. Louis, St. Louis is going to give you some goals too. So both of those teams, and then Calgary, who knows? But they tend to play well against Calgary.
Yeah, we'll keep you posted. And Locked On Wild is the best spot you can stay up to date on all things Minnesota Wild throughout the entirety of the season, whether I'm in one place or the next. But appreciate everybody's patience once again.
Seth, San Diego.
Yeah, we're getting closer to fully acclimated, but I just got to make sure that the internet is good enough to hold a full length postcast, because as of right now, I don't think it will. So we'll get that all ironed out, and I'll let you know for sure tomorrow if we are able to get you with the postcast. Otherwise, we for sure will on Thursday. But we'll get them back and going again, and we'll continue to keep you up to date on all things Minnesota Wild with new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.